The cameras have always loved the Slaton sisters. From the very beginning, the appeal of Amy and Tammy was never about glamour, but about rawness, about putting two women's real struggles on display for millions to consume. When TLC launched 1000LB Sisters, it was sold as a brutally honest portrayal of life, addiction, and family. But behind the laughter, the meltdowns, and the shocking wins, a darker truth simmered just beneath the surface. A truth that would eventually erupt into accusations of exploitation, betrayal, and a lawsuit worth $50,000. The kind of truth that no network executive ever wants exposed. The story really begins with Tammy, the sister who nearly didn't survive. Her weight spiraled out of control until she was more than 700 pounds, trapped in her own body, tethered to oxygen tanks, and warned repeatedly by doctors that her life was on the line. Viewers tuned in each week, wondering if she would make it another episode. The suspense became part of the show's DNA. Would this be the season Tammy dies? Was her family about to face the unthinkable? Producers leaned into that fear, framing each cliffhanger around the possibility of tragedy. For TLC, Tammy's suffering was a ratings goldmine, but in late 2021, the storyline almost came to an abrupt, devastating end. Tammy was rushed to the hospital, her lungs failing, her body shutting down. A medically induced coma was her only chance, and for weeks she hovered between life and death. Fans across the world held their breath. On Twitter, hashtags praying for Tammy trended. On Facebook, family members begged strangers to send support. And in the editing rooms at TLC, producers weighed their options. If Tammy died, the show could become a sensationalized tragedy. If she survived, it could transform into a story of redemption. Either way, they knew the cameras couldn't look away. And somehow, against every odd, Tammy woke up, her body weak, her spirit broken, but her will to live stronger than it had ever been. For the first time, she agreed to long-term rehab, to fight for her health in a way she had never done before. And with that decision, the narrative shifted. TLC had its miracle storyline. The villain turned heroine, the lost cause, who found redemption. Tammy's story became inspirational overnight. Viewers who once mocked her now praised her. Doctors who doubted her were forced to admit her progress was real. Tammy, once the face of failure, became the face of survival. But there was another side to the story. One the cameras never lingered on for too long. Amy, once the fan favorite, now seemed out of place. Her marriage was crumbling. She was raising two young children while filming, and in Tammy's rise, Amy's spotlight dimmed. For years, Amy had been the steady one, the sympathetic one, the caretaker who earned respect while Tammy suffered. But as Tammy succeeded, Amy's struggles became harder to ignore. On social media, fans noticed, where once Amy had been praised for her patience, now she was criticized for jealousy, for bitterness, for seeming resentful of her sister's success. And in the midst of this shift, rumors began to swirl that the sisters weren't just battling personal issues, they were also preparing to take on TLC itself. The lawsuit, whispered about in online forums and leaked in fragments to tabloids, centered on allegations that TLC had failed to pay the Slaton sisters fairly. $50,000 may sound small in the world of reality television, but to Amy and Tammy, it symbolized years of feeling used and underpaid. Compared to the millions of dollars the network generated from ad revenue, international streaming deals, and merchandise tied to the show, the sisters' earnings seemed shockingly low. Fans began to ask the obvious question: how could two women who gave so much of themselves to the cameras, their bodies, their breakdowns, their health crises, even their marriages, be compensated so little? Whispers turned to outrage. TikTok videos went viral claiming TLC was exploiting vulnerable stars for profit. YouTube commentators dissected every contract clause they could find, pointing to a long history of TLC underpaying its talent. From John and Kate +8 to Here Comes Honey Boo Boo, the network had always thrived on controversy, but it had also always faced accusations of putting profit above people. Now, Amy and Tammy were the latest to speak out, and their fans were ready to rally behind them. For Amy, the lawsuit wasn't just about money, it was about dignity. She had given birth on camera, raised her children under the scrutiny of millions, and endured humiliation in episode after episode. Yet, she claimed, the financial reward didn't match the sacrifice. For Tammy, the lawsuit carried even greater weight. She had nearly died while filming. Her coma, her tracheotomy, her most vulnerable moments were broadcast to the world. And now, she and her sister were demanding that TLC acknowledge the value of their pain. Behind the scenes, tensions escalated. Producers allegedly warned the sisters about going public. Lawyers stepped in. Negotiations dragged on. But the damage was already done. Fans felt betrayed. Instead of seeing TLC as a platform for transformation, they began to see it as a machine that chewed people up and spat them out. The Slaton sisters, once dismissed as reality TV curiosities, were suddenly viewed as victims of corporate greed. And as the lawsuit gained traction, the question shifted from whether the sisters would win in court to whether TLC could survive the backlash. The family dynamics only added fuel to the fire. Siblings and in-laws began taking sides. Some urged Amy and Tammy to walk away from TLC entirely, to rebuild their lives outside the cameras. Others worried that biting the hand that fed them would backfire. Arguments spilled onto social media, cryptic posts hinting at betrayal and broken trust. Fans analyzed every word, every photo, trying to piece together the truth. What they found was a family unraveling under the weight of fame, money, and exploitation. Amy's personal life spiraled at the worst possible time. Her marriage to Michael collapsed in full view of the public. Court documents revealed bitter disputes, custody battles, and allegations of neglect. Tabloids painted her as unstable, overwhelmed, unable to balance motherhood with fame. For a woman once celebrated as the responsible sister, it was a devastating fall from grace. Meanwhile, Tammy's image continued to rise. Slimmer, healthier, newly married to Caleb. She appeared to be thriving, but even that storyline carried its own heartbreak. As Caleb's sudden passing cast a shadow over her newfound joy, the sisters' once solid bond was fractured. Where once Amy had been Tammy's lifeline, now Tammy seemed to stand on her own. And where once Tammy had been the source of chaos, now Amy's instability took center stage. It was a role reversal that fascinated viewers but devastated the sisters themselves. In the middle of all this chaos, the lawsuit became more than a legal battle. It became a symbol of their struggle to reclaim control over their lives, their images, and their futures. And so the stage was set. Two sisters who had given everything to reality television were now turning their fight against the very network that made them famous. The lawsuit loomed like a storm cloud, threatening not just the Slaton family but the entire TLC empire. Fans demanded answers, critics demanded accountability, and behind closed doors, executives scrambled to contain the fallout. This was no longer just about weight loss or family drama. This was about power, money, and truth. It was about who really owned the Slaton sisters' story, the women who lived it, or the network that broadcast it. And as whispers grew louder, one thing became clear. The truth behind the lawsuit was darker and more explosive than anyone imagined. The lawsuit was no longer just whispers in the shadows. By early 2023, the storm had broken wide open. Court filings became public record, and suddenly everyone knew. Amy and Tammy Slaton were taking legal action against TLC, accusing the network of underpayment, exploitation, and breach of trust. The figure of $50,000 sounded modest in the grand scheme of television, but fans quickly understood the symbolism. If the sisters were being shortchanged on something as basic as contractual payments, what else had the network been hiding? Inside the courtroom, the tension was palpable. On one side, lawyers for TLC, polished and expensive, argued that the sisters had been compensated fairly under their contracts. They pointed to clauses, signatures, and industry standards. On the other side, Amy and Tammy sat with their own legal team, visibly uncomfortable but determined. Their case wasn't just about math on a piece of paper, it was about years of humiliation. Medical emergencies turned into cliffhangers, and family meltdowns edited for maximum drama. The sisters' attorneys painted a picture of exploitation, of vulnerable women manipulated by a powerful network that had built its empire on their suffering. The media feasted on every detail. Tabloids published daily updates. News outlets debated whether reality TV had gone too far. And on social media, fans split into camps. Some argued that the sisters knew what they were signing up for, that fame always came with a price. Others insisted that TLC had crossed a line, exploiting medical emergencies and family trauma for profit while giving the stars barely enough to survive. Hashtags calling for boycotts of the network trended across platforms. TikTok creators dissected every moment of the show, accusing producers of staging scenes, pushing unhealthy narratives, and even encouraging family fights to boost ratings. As the legal battle dragged on, the sisters themselves began to fracture under the pressure. Amy, already fragile from her divorce and custody disputes, grew increasingly erratic. Friends whispered that she was overwhelmed, drowning in responsibilities as a single mother while also being thrust into the spotlight of a lawsuit that demanded poise and discipline. Tammy, meanwhile, surprised everyone by emerging as the more composed of the two. For once, it wasn't Amy holding Tammy together, it was Tammy holding Amy. And fans noticed. The role reversal shocked viewers who had spent years watching Tammy lash out and crumble under stress. Now she spoke calmly in interviews, expressing hope for fairness, while Amy sometimes broke down in tears or lashed out on social media. But if the lawsuit strained the sisters, it also ripped open old wounds within the wider family. Chris Combs, their outspoken brother, reportedly clashed with producers about filming schedules and pay. Misty and Amanda, the sisters often seen in supporting roles, were caught in the middle. Should they side with Amy and Tammy's fight for justice, or protect their own positions with the network? Family dinners turned into battlegrounds. Private arguments leaked online. Every hint of conflict became fodder for fans eager to prove their theories. Some claimed Amy was secretly sabotaging Tammy's case. Others accused Tammy of using the lawsuit as leverage to secure her own spin-off. Behind the scenes, TLC executives scrambled to maintain control. Whispers emerged of settlement offers, of quiet payouts designed to make the problem disappear. But the sisters refused to back down, at least publicly. Their attorneys insisted they wanted not just money but accountability. They wanted recognition that what had happened to them was wrong, that they were more than characters in a circus. TLC, however, was just as determined. To admit fault could open the floodgates for other stars to sue. If the Slatons won, what would stop the stars of other hit shows from My 600lb Life to Unexpected from coming forward with their own claims? The stakes grew higher than anyone anticipated. What started as a $50,000 dispute had evolved into a potential reckoning for an entire genre of television. For fans, the spectacle was both thrilling and heartbreaking. Many who had watched the show from its earliest days felt complicit, guilty even. They had laughed at Tammy's meltdowns, pitied Amy's tears, and binged episodes that turned real suffering into entertainment. Now they were forced to confront the cost of their curiosity. Was it worth it? Was any reality show worth watching if it meant destroying the very people it claimed to follow? Meanwhile, the sisters' public image continued to evolve. Tammy, slimmer and healthier than ever, became the unexpected face of resilience. She spoke softly about her journey, her losses, her desire to inspire others. Even after the devastating death of her husband Caleb, she seemed grounded, determined not to let grief or exploitation define her. Amy, however, struggled to maintain that same grace. She lashed out at trolls online, posted cryptic messages about betrayal, and sometimes hinted that even Tammy wasn't entirely on her side. Fans who once adored her began to drift away, frustrated by her negativity. Some even suggested that Amy didn't truly want Tammy to succeed, that deep down she resented her sister's survival and redemption. These whispers became louder during the trial, when Tammy testified about her near-death experience, about how her coma and tracheotomy were filmed and packaged as entertainment. The courtroom was silent. Her voice cracked as she described waking up to find her most vulnerable moments had already aired. Strangers commenting on her body while she was still fighting to breathe. It was raw, emotional, and devastating. Amy, too, had her chance to speak, but her testimony came across less focused. She drifted between talking about unpaid wages and grievances with her ex-husband, leaving some observers unsure of her true priorities. Commentators pounced, framing Tammy as the noble victim and Amy as the bitter sidekick. Inside TLC's boardrooms, panic spread. Executives worried, not just about the case but about optics. Every major outlet was covering the lawsuit. Former reality TV stars chimed in, recounting their own experiences with unfair pay and manipulative editing. TLC's reputation as the learning channel was once again being dragged through the mud. Accused of profiting off pain without accountability, the network needed damage control, fast. Leaks suggested they considered canceling the show altogether, quietly pulling the plug to make the controversy disappear. But canceling meant admitting defeat. So instead, they leaned harder into controlling the narrative. Selective leaks painted the sisters as greedy, ungrateful, and difficult to work with. Anonymous sources described outrageous demands, painting Amy and Tammy as divas rather than victims. But fans weren't convinced. In fact, the smear campaigns backfired. Each negative leak only fueled sympathy for the sisters. Viewers saw it as proof that the network was desperate, willing to destroy its own stars rather than face accountability. TikTok creators rallied, launching hashtags like #JusticeForTammy and #PayTheSLATons. Online petitions gained traction, calling on TLC to release fair compensation details for all its stars. The more the network fought, the more it lost control of the story. Through it all, the sisters' relationship teetered on the edge. Some days, they appeared united, sitting side by side in court, presenting a shared front. Other days, their distance was obvious. Rumors swirled that Amy resented Tammy for stealing the spotlight, even in the lawsuit. After all, the public saw Tammy as the true victim, the woman who nearly died while TLC kept the cameras rolling. Amy, by contrast, was increasingly framed as the unstable one, the sister who couldn't handle her own life. For a woman who once defined herself as the caretaker, the reversal was almost too much to bear. As the second phase of the trial approached, with depositions from producers and financial documents set to be revealed, the tension hit a breaking point. The court wasn't just about deciding who deserved $50,000. It was about exposing an entire system. Lawyers hinted at shocking evidence. Emails where producers discussed staging scenes. Medical staff pressured to allow filming in sensitive moments. Contracts designed to trap stars in cycles of dependency. The promise of revelations loomed like a thundercloud. For TLC, it threatened to be a public relations nightmare. For the sisters, it was both terrifying and liberating. The truth, long buried, was finally about to come out, and the fans waited. On YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, entire communities prepared for the next bombshell. Each update sparked theories, debates, and outrage. The Slaton sisters had once been just two women struggling in rural Kentucky. Now they were the center of a national conversation about exploitation, fame, and justice. Their personal drama had become something much bigger, a cultural reckoning with reality TV itself. The revelations began slowly, a trickle at first. Depositions from former crew members, redacted emails slipping into the record. Vague financial charts hinting at where the money had gone. But soon the trickle became a flood, and the picture was damning. TLC's defense, once strong and confident, started to wobble under the weight of its own secrets. The contracts were airtight, yes, but they were also predatory, locking vulnerable families into agreements that gave the network complete control over their lives. A former production assistant testified that producers regularly scripted or manipulated scenes, whispering lines into cast members' ears to spark fights or pushing filming into private medical appointments. One shocking email exchange revealed producers joking about Tammy's meltdowns, calling them ratings gold and celebrating her hospitalizations as plot twists. For fans who had suspected manipulation all along, the evidence was confirmation of their worst fears. What they had watched for entertainment was not just a reality show, it was the calculated dissection of two sisters' lives. Every trauma stretched and repackaged for profit. And it wasn't just Amy and Tammy. Other TLC stars quietly reached out to the sisters' legal team, offering stories of their own. Some were too scared to testify publicly, fearing retribution or lawsuits. But behind closed doors, a pattern emerged: withheld payments, exploitative contracts, and producers willing to do whatever it took to squeeze drama from struggling families. The court filings ignited a media storm. Headlines blared across major outlets. TLC accused of exploitation in $50,000 Slaton sisters lawsuit. Talk shows debated whether reality TV should be regulated more strictly. Lawyers speculated about the precedent the case might set. Could Amy and Tammy's fight change the industry forever? Or would TLC bury them under the weight of its endless resources? Inside the sisters' camp, victory seemed tantalizingly close, but cracks in their unity widened. Tammy, riding the wave of newfound public sympathy, embraced her role as the wronged star, finally reclaiming her dignity. Amy, however, struggled. She felt overshadowed, her own grievances dismissed in favor of Tammy's dramatic survival story. She began to resent the way fans, commentators, and even their own lawyers framed the narrative. Tammy was the phoenix rising from the ashes, and Amy was the bitter ex-wife drowning in chaos. The imbalance gnawed at her, and soon whispers of jealousy became open conflict. At one hearing, Amy's frustration boiled over. She snapped at Tammy outside the courthouse, accusing her of making it all about yourself. Cameras captured the exchange, and within hours, the clip was everywhere. Comment sections exploded with speculation. Were the sisters turning on each other? Could the lawsuit itself destroy the bond that had carried them through years of struggle? The timing could not have been worse. TLC's defense seized on the footage, arguing that the sisters' claims were inconsistent, that even they couldn't agree on what the network owed them. But the damage to TLC's image was already done. Financial documents revealed that while the sisters made only a fraction of what they thought, the network had profited millions through ad revenue, streaming deals, and international licensing. In one particularly damning revelation, it was shown that TLC had spent more on marketing the show in a single year than the sisters earned in their first 3 seasons combined. For many fans, This was proof of exploitation. Hashtags like hashtag pay the SLA tons and hashtag TLC exposed trended across platforms. Petitions called for federal investigations into reality TV contracts. As the trial neared its climax, both sides dug in. TLC's lawyers warned that if the sisters won, it could upend the reality television industry. Amy and Tammy's team countered that maybe that was exactly what needed to happen. Every day brought new drama, new revelations, and new speculation about the outcome. Would TLC settle quietly to make the scandal disappear? Would the sisters push for a jury trial and risk everything for the chance at vindication? Meanwhile, the toll on the family grew unbearable. Chris Combs, once a vocal supporter, distanced himself from the chaos, focusing on his own health journey. Amanda and Misty tried to remain neutral but were inevitably pulled into the maelstrom. Even extended relatives were harassed online, accused of siding with one sister or the other. The Slaton family, already fractured, was being torn apart by the spotlight yet again. For Amy, the weight of it all was crushing. Nights spent crying, days spent lashing out on social media. Her mental health spiraled. She confided to friends that she sometimes regretted filing the lawsuit at all. That maybe life would have been easier if she had just walked away. Tammy, by contrast, seemed galvanized. For perhaps the first time in her life, she had the upper hand in health, in public sympathy, and in the courtroom. The shift between them was undeniable, and fans could see it. The final weeks of the trial brought the most explosive testimony yet. A former producer, speaking under oath, admitted that TLC deliberately provoked Tammy during her recovery. They had withheld meals, scheduled appointments late, and encouraged her to break diet rules, all to capture meltdowns on camera. The courtroom gasped when he revealed that during Tammy's coma, producers pushed to film inside her hospital room, even as doctors protested. For viewers who remembered those episodes, the revelation was horrifying. What had been pitched as raw documentary footage was in reality the result of relentless manipulation. By the time closing arguments came, the courtroom was packed. Reporters jostled for seats, fans lined the sidewalks outside. The sisters' lawyers argued passionately that TLC had exploited Amy and Tammy, underpaid them, and manipulated their lives for profit. TLC's attorneys countered that the sisters had signed willingly, cashed their checks, and built their fame on the network's platform. It was a classic battle of David versus Goliath, and the outcome was uncertain. Outside the courtroom, the world speculated endlessly. Would the sisters win a groundbreaking victory? Would TLC crush them with appeals and endless legal maneuvers? Or would both sides settle, the truth buried under non-disclosure agreements? For Amy and Tammy, the future hung in the balance. If they won, they could finally break free of TLC's grip, perhaps even start fresh on a new platform with more control over their image. If they lost, they risked financial ruin, reputational damage, and the possibility of being blacklisted from the industry altogether. But win or lose, one truth had already been exposed. The world now saw what really went on behind the cameras, the manipulation, the exploitation, the hidden costs of reality television. The Slaton sisters had ripped open the curtain, and nothing could put it back in place. As the jury deliberated, the sisters sat in silence, side by side, but worlds apart. Tammy stared straight ahead, her jaw set, determined. Amy fidgeted, her hands trembling, caught between hope and despair. Whatever the verdict, they both knew their lives would never be the same. And for fans watching around the world, one question echoed louder than all the others. Was this the end of 1000 Delby sisters, or just the beginning of a revolution that could change reality TV forever?